There we go. All right. So maybe this will work this time.
Yeah, see if everybody can hear you.
So maybe this will work this time. I'm gonna
Yeah, see if
adjustment.
everybody can hear you.
So maybe this will work this time. I'm gonna. All right. So I think this should be working at this point. I apologize to anyone who showed up before. First stream back in a while, off to a brilliant start. All right. So, with that being said,
Sorry.
no, you're fine. You're fine. Um, I had this great spiel before this, but like, let me just dive back in, and say that the conversation today is about. Yeah, so Troll with a Purpose says it's been a minute. Yeah, it's been a minute since I've streamed, and YouTube still has all the same issues. YouTube had this issue a while back where it took away the ability to preview a stream before you came in with it. So like I can't make sure that the audio and video are working properly until I'm already live. And so I thought it was, but narrator, it was in fact not. So basically, yeah, let's actually do this now. Apologies to anyone who showed up for the previous stream. It's should be working fine now. I will be discussing basically the toxic health effects of the state and the fact that it literally wants people dead. It subsists off of murder, theft, rape, any sort of thing it can do in order to maintain and expand its control. And it profits at every single step of the way. So basically, I posted about recent vaping regulations in the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus group, and I got feedback from Kayla Higginbotham about the fact that if essentially the state is consistently bad in this regard from the perspective of her, who is a smoke shop owner. They want people less healthy and more dependent on these, terrible substances that they have heavily subsidized in the past and currently do. And they're heavily supported by big tobacco lobbyists who, by the way, for any of you who aren't with me that the Koch brothers are a problem, maybe you will be after this because they are heavily affiliated with big tobacco. Just saying. But ultimately the general vibe of this conversation is going to be the state wants you dead, or at least ill enough that they can profit off your illness. So with that being said, why don't you introduce yourself, let people know how long you've been in this. You said 7 years in the smoke industry, if I remember correctly, and a few years in the libertarian industry because of that.
Yeah. So my name is Kayla Higginbotham. I currently own a smoke shop in Noonan, Georgia, and the name of my smoke shop is Hazy Vapor Lounge. I wanted it to be more of a vape shop with a lounge feel, but unfortunately, because of the way that the laws are set up and all of that kind of good stuff, I'd elected to put tobacco also in my shop because if it all goes away, at least I can still have some sort of viability in my store. Um, and that's a shame that I felt that way, like that I felt cornered. But I have been actually in the vape industry since 2015. I used to work at a local vape shop where they made their own vape juice, and obviously sold equipment and all that kind of good stuff too. But and then in 2016 is when they determined that vaping was considered a tobacco product and that the FDA then had jurisdiction over it. And it took a long time before, you know, a lot of the companies were required to submit PMTAs and all of that kind of stuff.
What is a
Um,
PMTA?
PMTA is a pre-market trial assessment, and that is where companies have to pay to submit their products to the FDA, and then they get to determine whether or not they think that it's safe for human consumption. And there is no guarantee that you will get approved, obviously. So with equipment and stuff like that, it's not, I mean, it's not as bad for companies submitting equipment. The issue lies in the vape juice. They are not approving any. They, as far as I know, they haven't approved anything that is fruity, or any menthols that I'm aware of. It's all just straight tobacco flavors, and that's great for people who like tobacco flavors. But the majority of your adults who are vaping do like the fruity and the dessert flavors, because if they wanted to smoke tobacco, they would still be smoking tobacco.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that I've helped, especially like the older people, um, that have stopped smoking, and they're doing something fruity or something desserty, they like that because, and they say that when they do the tobacco flavors, it makes them want cigarettes because of the taste of the tobacco. And
Yeah.
it's not, and the way that tobacco juice tastes, it tastes pretty good, but it's not going to taste like a cigarette. In my experience, tobacco juice usually will taste more like a cigar or a pipe tobacco generally. It's very hard to get like that cigarette flavor, and that's because of all the chemicals that they put in the cigarettes, which is what causes the cancer and all that kind of stuff. It's not nicotine. Nicotine is no more harmful to you than caffeine is. Obviously, if done in high enough doses, it can be dangerous, which, you've seen that with caffeine where people have, chugged how many ever monsters back to back and then they had a heart attack. You know, um, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's one of
Well,
those.
as somebody who has like been a caffeine addict since I was 4, and I'm not exaggerating. Basically, the thing with caffeine, you can get heart attacks, you get stiffened blood vessels and heart. You can have a stroke. It
Yeah,
can like thin your blood to the extent where you get like bleeding issues. Like caffeine toxicity is no fucking joke,
yeah.
but they
And
still sell drinks.
yeah, same thing with nicotine though. Like you can overdo it with nicotine, and that's why they have, like, you have different devices that can facilitate it in different ways. So you have your what they call MTL, or mouth to lung devices, and then you have your direct to lung devices, which, um, I'll just show, like, my device is what is considered a direct lung device, because you pull it directly into your lungs and then you blow out a bigger cloud of smoke. With those, you generally are using very low amounts of nicotine, like 3 milligrams, which isn't a lot. And then in the, mouth to lung devices, you're getting a very small amount of vapor, and it's very similar to smoking a cigarette, as far as the output is concerned. And those generally will have higher amounts of nicotine, and they'll be, salt nicotines usually, because with all of the stuff that's gone on with the PMTA, a lot of companies, can't afford to put in higher nicotine, um, the high nic variations of their juice, because these the 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 FDA charges companies per bottle size, per nicotine level, and per flavor. So if you have one flavor that you have at six different nicotines and three different bottle sizes, you do the math. And
Yeah.
you have to pay for each one of those variations. I believe, there is a company called Avail Vapor. They were based in Virginia. I actually worked for them as well. They had a shop, in Peachtree City, Georgia, and I worked at that shop. They have since, because of the PMTA, they have closed all of their locations, and they had over 200 in the U.S., and they closed all of their locations, but their main location in Virginia, because the PMTA broke them. And they only had one. They had 26 flavors at, let's see, 0, 3, 6, 12, at four different nicotines, and, I want to say they were only doing one bottle size, but either way, that's still a lot. And it completely broke their company, because they only, out of all of those flavors, they only had one that was approved, and it was a tobacco flavor.
Yeah. Yeah. So also, so multiple things there. I'm going to make an analogy here that this would be like trying to stop alcoholism by banning any drinks that didn't taste like alcohol.
Yeah, yeah, that's essentially it. And what's crazy is, they're so upset. They're like, oh, we got to save the kids. We have to save the kids. And I've been saying this forever. If you really cared about the kids, you wouldn't be letting people out here that touch kids, get out in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. Well, also,
Like,
like, so on that score, it's always funny to hear from those people. The foster care system run by the state has, like, some of the
oh,
highest concentration of sex trafficking of minors. The public school system is a huge hotbed for pedos and has a worse problem with that than the Catholic Church. So,
yeah,
like, the whole fucking deal here is such a problem.
yeah, yeah, no, it the like what's happening with the vape industry is it's a symptom. It's a symptom of a bigger problem, 100%. And the thing is what's really upsetting about the whole thing is, I smoked. I smoked before I vaped, and I get it. Like, I get it because my younger brother, he's 10 years younger than me. He did begin doing Juul and stuff like that with his friends, because the thing is the way that some of these companies were marketing their products, they were marketing them in a way to where things weren't very clear. So they had pods that were 5%. Okay, well, if you don't know anything about vaping and you've never vaped before, you think you're only getting 5 milligrams. I can't tell you how many people I have talked to who smoke Juul who thought that the 3 and the 5% meant 3 milligrams or 5 milligrams. No, it is, it's 30. It's 30 milligrams. It's 50 milligrams,
Yeah,
because that is a 5% over, like that is over 100. So that translates into that.
yeah,
Um, and but most people don't realize that, and they don't realize that they're getting such a high concentrated amount of nicotine. So there are people who began a nicotine addiction where there didn't need to be one, and that is a problem. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's not a problem, but the problem lies with where these kids are getting it from.
right.
Because the thing is, you know you if you're not like, specialty stores like vape stores and tobacco stores and stuff like that are very important, because they are how you're going to keep kids from getting nicotine products. Just like if you go into a liquor store, they're going to want to see your ID before they ever, especially if you look under a certain age, they're going to ID you before they ever sell you anything.
Right.
A lot of, like, having these products in gas stations where these people were already selling kids cigarettes, and this, like,
Well, I know this because my friends, when I was in high school, were like, they weren't vaping because A, vaping wasn't a thing yet, and B,
yeah,
they were buying cigarettes and they were getting cigarettes. That's what they were doing. They didn't care about the law. They didn't need to. They had their fucking stores. I was buying booze at certain stores at 14. They
yeah,
don't, yeah.
yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I personally believe, like, and I'm not trying to hurt anybody's business or anything like that, but I don't think that gas stations are an appropriate place to have products that require age limits. If you're going to have a system where you require age limits and you're going to put these types of restrictions on people, you can't allow them in a free space where people of all ages are going to be in there. That's just how it is.
Well, and as an anarchist, which is what I am, I just want these restrictions gone, and I want
Right.
parents to be close enough to their kids and not abusive enough to their kids, anarchistic parenting styles, that they can have the conversation where, yeah, don't fucking have that. It's bad for you, and their kid will be like, oh, okay, I trust you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but see, so that is a very idealistic,
Yeah,
that's very idealistic, because my dad tried to have conversations with me about, like, hey, be careful about this and be careful about that. You don't want to do this and you don't want to do that. And I was just like, whatever, dad, you're dumb. I know everything. So some kids are just going to have that mentality of, I have to figure it out on my own. I have to learn for myself. And you can sit there and tell them all day long, because I have children, and you can sit there and tell them all day long till you are blue in the face, don't do this, don't do that. Like, I'm telling you because I've been there, I've done that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're going to do what they want to do. They're going to, the best thing you can do as a parent is to facilitate an environment in which they do feel comfortable with you coming to you and saying like, hey, I want to try alcohol, or I want to try this, or my friends are doing this, like, what's that about, where they can come to you and talk to you about that. And even just having a conversation about like what are drugs and what they can do to you and that sort of thing, maybe that alone could satiate any kind of will that they would have to try it, because that's where a lot of the issues lie with kids and doing things that they want to do, is it's parents trying to stop them from doing it. Just like, that's why prohibition doesn't work, like, which is what we're talking about, is because whenever when you put somebody in a box and you say you can't do this, you're going to have people that say, hold my beer,
Mm-hmm.
watch me do it. Like, and that's just how it is. I don't believe that we are at a point of being able to govern ourselves, unfortunately. I wish that we were, but there's I don't know if you've seen it before, but it's the shopping cart theory, where it's like, when you go to the grocery store, and if everyone returns their shopping cart to the to the shopping cart area, then that means that we could govern ourselves, because that means that everyone is responsible for themselves. But you have people that leave their shopping carts in the parking lot, and that shows that they don't have enough care for their neighbor, um, or for themselves, to be able to clean up after themselves. So
Right,
they're
like I was saying this the other day actually because like I got into an argument with somebody who had basically no argument against what I was actually saying and instead just wanted to quote somebody else and act like that was. Point is that he was trying to delegate responsibility onto like another group or some sort of vague philosophical concept for what he supports. And what the conversation was, this tenant pushed his, like, 22-year-old tenant pushed a 71-year-old landlord down the stairs for trying to collect, and I'm not making this up, $200 rent. Imagine paying $200 rent and still being mad. Um, and
that's
so, yeah, and he died. The 71-year-old hit his head on the pavement and fucking died, like, immediately. And so, my comment about the whole discussion, if anarchists are unwilling to respect voluntary arrangements now, people have no reason to believe that will change in an anarchist society. We either have to set the example now or accept the consequences for not setting it. Hold yourself to a higher standard every day.
yeah,
Eh.
yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's what it boils down to. But unfortunately, and I don't know I don't know what would have to change for people to be like, yeah, like, we have to do better and be better. I don't know what would, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what would be the thing for people to do that, but they're not there yet.
yeah, well, it needs to start at home. Like, people send their. Okay, I was banned in the Fakertarians group, mostly because of a fucking an image, a screenshot of a tweet I made talking. I think my internet dipped. An image, a screenshot I made of the like. I want to end mandatory schooling and abolish the Department of Education, and my this was sort of my compromise. You don't have to. The conservatives don't have to worry about what their kids are learning because they're teaching themselves, and and like, sort of progressive people um, who are all worried about these student loan debts. 92% of student loan debts are in the Department of Education. It's to the government. So if people stopped needing to pay the government, 92% of student loans would vanish. So if
Yeah.
if we abolish the DOE, 92% of student loans vanish. It's like a leftist dream scenario, and Malcolm X said only a fool lets his enemy teach his kids, so it's also based in leftist praxis not to have a state organization teaching your children. So, like, ultimately, it just fits. It fits, but they didn't like it. They made a bunch of strawman attacks, and then they started to attack me personally and got mad when I attacked them personally back by suggesting that maybe the guy who was in the thumbnail or the profile picture should like exercise more than once a week. Um, so like the thing that happened there was like they falsely accused me of saying that parents who send their kids to public school are unfit parents. I didn't say that. They couldn't find a screenshot of me saying that. They lied repeatedly anyway, and then eventually just permanently suspended me after they also got pwned in another comment section. But like the point I'm making here is that like when when I shared this information there, they balked, and so do many other people. But that's where it starts. It starts at fucking home, and people need to like educate their own kids, like if they can, educate their own kids, be respectful to their kids as much as possible, not use violence on their kids, and their kids won't grow up to thinking all these irrational solutions are reasonable because they won't have a reason to. They'll have a good relationship with their parents based in mutual respect. So
Yeah.
then they like the entire society can blossom from that because a trusted family unit is stronger than the state. The state
Yeah.
wants to like crush the family because they want to supersede that role. You know, go to daddy government. They'll give you food, they'll give you housing, they'll give you support, they'll give you a shrink to tell you that your problems are solvable by the state. All of this stuff. They'll
Yeah.
support big pharma so that you can like keep getting on their pills and keep getting into FDA supported things which are supported by big pharma, and that's why it's a revolving door between the FDA and big pharma companies. You know,
Yeah.
people will start to get a better relationship from the start because they won't learn maladaptive coping mechanisms to society.
Yeah.
That's my way of sort of explaining where we need to go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and also I think that if we start doing away with like huge corporations, like for example, Walmart, because Walmart is probably A, something that everybody knows, and B, I mean, honestly, once you started getting like superstores, or not necessarily superstores, but just like supermarkets, that's where you started seeing the end of like mom and pop grocery stores or mom and pop butcher shops and things of that nature. And, you know, it's that is also a big problem is people aren't doing for themselves anymore. We are no longer living in small communities where we are reliant on each other. Not that being self-sufficient is an issue or is a problem. What I'm saying is like, you know back before we had these superstores and all that kind of stuff, we lived in smaller tight-knit groups where, okay, well, if I make clothes and you make shoes, well, that's great because I might be able to trade you, a couple shirts for a couple pairs of shoes for my kids.
Right.
you know each get something out of it. um and whatever I don't have you might have, and whatever you don't have the guy next door to you might have.
Mutual
And
aid.
yeah, exactly. And that's what, no one got anything for nothing. Everyone had something to contribute. And I think that sounds a little communist, I guess, in a way, but at the same time,
Oh,
it's
I
like,
don't. I'm the entire bottom strip. I don't. I work with communists. I work with mutualists, with syndicalists, egoists. You know, agorists. The whole bottom strip is open to me. Like so,
yeah,
something sounding communist isn't a problem for me.
yeah. Well, I know it's an issue with some, but it's not like, I think everyone should live on a commune and sing kumbaya and all that kind of frou stuff.
Also,
Um,
Kumbaya isn't a good song. I'm just gonna say that.
no, it's not. It's a terrible song. But, that's what most people think of,
Yeah.
when you think of, that type of lifestyle. But I mean, really, you have to think about it. Like before there were Walmarts and Krogers and Publix and I don't know, whatever, Ingles and all that kind of stuff. That's you went to a local store, like it was usually like a general store, and they sold everything you needed for your animals on your farm. They sold you, and then they also sold produce that, the other farmers were coming and selling to them. And so there was a central place where you bought and sold goods or traded goods in order for other goods that you had. That that is pure capitalism, is what it is. And that's what we don't have anymore, because we have the government and their fingers in all these different pies, because God forbid they don't get a piece. And and that's really what it all boils down to. you know um and and that's but see, then you have like these big corporations like Walmart and stuff like that, and they're not able, they have all of most of their employees on some sort of government assistance. They don't pay their employees enough to not be on government assistance, and then they use that government assistance in their stores, with the small little discount that they get.
Yeah.
you know
So
it's it's a
Roth
terrible cycle.
G- Rothbard had a way of putting it, and what Rothbard said, if we are to keep the term capitalism at all, then we must distinguish between free market capitalism on the one hand and state capitalism on the other. The two are as different as night and day in their nature and consequences. Free market capitalism is a network of free and voluntary exchanges in which producers work, produce, and exchange their products for the products of others through prices voluntarily arrived at. State capitalism consists of one or more groups making use of the coercive apparatus of the government, the state, to accumulate capital for themselves by expropriating the production of others by force and violence. Throughout history, states have existed as instruments for organized predation and exploitation. It doesn't much matter which group of people happen to gain control of the state at any given time, whether it be Oriental despots, kings, landlords, privileged merchants, army officers, or communist parties. The result is everywhere and always the coercive mulcting of the mass of producers. In most centuries, of course, largely the peasantry, by a ruling class of dominant rulers and their hired professional bureaucracy. Generally, the state has its inception in naked banditry and conquest, after which the conquerors settle down among the subject population to exact permanent and continuing tribute in the form of taxation, and to parcel out the land of the peasants in huge tracts to the conquering warlords, who then proceed to extract rent. A modern paradigm is the Spanish conquest of Latin America, where the military conquest of conquest of the native Indian peasantry led to the parceling out of Indian lands to the Spanish families and the settling down of the Spaniards as a permanent ruling class over the native peasantry. So basically, his whole point is that, like, capitalism for a long time has been established as, like, not free market, and we need an alternative to that. We need free markets, but, like, solving the problem starts with knowing the problem, and the problem is that the state has got its grubby fingers into everything. Like Konkin, who, like, sort of spun off from Rothbard, he said that corporations are an imitation of the state, not the market. And so, like, these mega corporations all benefiting from the same sort of pool of, like, coercive abusive policies, they will, like, expand as much as possible, and they don't need to worry about competition because the state will help them crush it. They don't need to worry about, like, ethics or reason. They can just do what they want because they have the blessing and protection of the state, and that insulates them from the same consequences that mom and pa down at the general store would have to worry about.
Right, exactly. And that's the part of what's difficult having a smoke shop, is because they don't, for one, you know, I told you about A Billion Lives,
Right.
when we
And I
briefly
watched
spoke.
that, by the way, this morning, so.
Yeah, did you like it? Was it informative?
It was. Though I watch things on 2x speed because I want the information, not like the slow dramatic music. I'm convinced by facts, not the
Yeah,
documentary
not
format.
yeah, not the emotional pool that they do.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things where they want to keep us sick,
Yeah.
because it's not just big tobacco that benefits from the vape industry being muted or wiped out. It is also big pharma. They also benefit from it because you smoke cigarettes, you get sick, whether it be cancer or heart disease or, whatever other ailments that smoking these chemically induced cigarettes cause.
Pneumonia, emphysema, COPD, blood
Yeah,
vessel stiffening, cancer, heart issues, strokes, diabetes. Just, hey, go ahead
right.
though.
Yeah, yeah. So all those different ailments, who benefits from you getting sick from that? Big pharma does.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it's way bigger than just, oh, poor Mr. Philip Morris doesn't get his chunk of change. Poor Mr. RJ Reynolds doesn't get his chunk of change. It's way more than that. And also there was a huge lawsuit that happened in the 80s because once they figured out that, oh, hey, cigarettes are bad for you, because they used to market cigarettes as like, oh, this is great for you. It'll help you run faster. It'll help you
One
smoke.
million doctors recommend this shit.
Yeah, exactly. And they, they and so they did all that, and then the Royal College of Physicians came out, I think it was like in 1967 or something like that, and said that, hey, smoking cigarettes is actually really bad for you and we don't recommend that. And America denied. They were like, no, 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 it's not true, it's not true. Cigarettes are great. And then in the 80s, they were like, oh man, all these people are getting sick. Why are they getting sick? Why is everyone dying? And it was like, oh, it's because of cigarettes. So then all the states got together and they were like, we're going to sue these big tobacco companies for losing us tax revenue from prematurely killing our citizens. That's what they did. And they won. And even now, the big tobacco companies are required to give them a payout from that settlement. And and it's based off of how much they lost per population and how much they will continue to lose per population for people smoking. So, for example, if you notice the higher populated states, and more blue ran states, for example, Michigan, Detroit, New York City. I want to say that like Massachusetts, Boston's on there as well. All of those were the first states to put in flavor bans. They were the first states to start really cracking down. Like in Boston, I'm not sure if it's still the case, if they ended up getting that thrown out or not. I can't remember what happened with it, but you were going to have to register your vape like a firearm. And if you got
Oh,
caught,
really?
yeah, if you got caught with a vaping device that was not registered to you from another, and it came from somewhere else, then you would be fined.
That's fucking absurd.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely crazy. I think it might have ended up getting thrown out. I'm not exactly sure what ended up happening with that, but it was insane. Absolutely insane. And there were other states that were on the verge of passing stuff like that. And it was all coming from blue states.
Yeah.
It was all coming from blue states because, you know, it I don't know. And you would think it would be more red states because, your red states are usually your more conservative states, which are your southern states, which is where a lot of agriculture happens. Like if you go down to South Georgia, it's nothing but tobacco fields and cotton fields. Um, And same thing with like North Carolina, South Carolina. I mean, tons of tobacco fields. I mean, Winston-Salem is in uh, North Carolina. Like, that's a huge. I mean, that's literally where pretty much all your cigarettes come from is Winston-Salem.
Well, so my theory, like if that's the case, it goes back to the state capitalism slash anti-corporate mentality I mentioned earlier, which is that yeah, those might be blue states, but they're also high population concentration states. So if they wanted to like with high crime levels, if they wanted to make anyone addicted to anything, that's where they would start, like because that's where the conditions are right for addiction. It's like Rat Park, you find out that hey, if we stop making shit so fucked up, people won't want to get fucked up to avoid shit. Like so
Yeah,
like it's any sort of substance like that is going to be like that, where they say, hey, let's hook people on these dangerous things and make it a social thing and put all these like ads out there that say how like awesome smoking is. And then after that, um, because we created the environment where they were popular to begin with and literally used Edward Bernays' Torches of Freedom fucking propaganda campaign, to make it seem like women's liberation and like the Winston, I think, camel, or sorry, the Winston man, like going up on like a mountaintop or something and like looking
yeah,
all chiseled and shit and being like, this is what men smoke, like fucking just get somebody to sound like this in a commercial and you'll have people smoking in 2 minutes. Like if
right.
they put on the artificial bullshit. By the way, if anyone needs a voice actor, hit me up. But like basically, the general vibe is that if you want to get people addicted on something, you go where there are a lot of them and where shit's a lot fucked up. And then
Yeah.
you make it worse by stigmatizing them after a successful campaign of that. That doesn't make people stop smoking.
No,
The,
because they're addicted.
yeah, it just makes them feel like shit. So fuck, I need to smoke. You
Yeah.
fucking bastard.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean it's absolutely insane. And because of all the stigma around it. So because I own a smoke shop, and even if I didn't own a smoke shop and it was just a vape shop, this would still be the case. I cannot pay for ads on Facebook. I cannot pay for ads on Instagram. I'm so close to having my Instagram shut down, by the way. Um, and I can't pay for ads on Google. And that also includes, and so I also sell CBD
Mm-hmm.
and like Delta 8 and all that kind of stuff because Georgia is not a legal state.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and that's another big thing too is, I, my store, they haven't flagged any of my vape stuff. They've only flagged my CBD and my Delta 8 stuff, trying to say that I'm trying to elicit illegal substances.
But they won't ban Snoop Dogg, who's literally like all that. And I'm not saying that they should ban him, but they don't ban celebrities when they promote it actively
Yeah,
as part of their brand all the fucking time. Ram
yeah,
it in. It's like when YouTube suspends the Act Man. Well, demonetizes his content and basically locks him out because he had quote nudity on his screen for a short bit by showing what was on somebody else's channel that they don't do the same thing to.
right.
And so like they'll go after people that they don't like in pursuit of people that they do like's money. They dick ride the people who are in the establishment in order to make sure that they get their way forced through.
Mm-hmm. 100%. That's what it's all about. And that's another thing, you hear about Snoop Dogg and like Kanye West and, the Kardashians and all these other people, but you know who you don't really hear about? Like people like Killer Mike.
Yeah,
You
well,
know,
and Run the Jewels in general, like both of them are mad underrated.
yeah. Well, it's not just not only are they underrated, but I mean, they have very um considering what the current political climate is, very radical
Yeah,
ideas.
they wrote a
Um
song called "Kill Your Masters."
I know, right? I mean, Killer Mike had a show that he did on Netflix where he bought a chunk of land and created he like annexed himself or he annexed that land from the United States government and was in the process of trying to create his own government as a social experiment.
Really? I gotta watch that then. Was it on Netflix or is it on Netflix?
Yeah, it's on. I don't know if it still is or not, because it was right when all the protests and riots were happening with George Floyd, and they did that whole big, like, Black creators spill on Netflix. I can't remember what the name of it was, but it was like a series, and he also did a thing where he had the Bloods and the Crips create their own soda companies, and instead of them, like, his idea was, instead of fighting it out in the streets, why don't you fight it out, on
Was
the
it
ship.
Trigger Warning? The show?
I think that's it. I
Alright,
can't remember.
cool.
I can't remember the name of it, but that sounds about right. I think it's about 6 or 7 episodes, maybe 8. Um, but yeah, it
That is
was.
still available.
Yes, it should be.
Huh.
Because it was a Netflix original. They normally don't take their Netflix original stuff down too often.
Yeah, and I'll be getting Netflix back to watch Sonic Prime. All y'all know, but like, so I might as well watch that at the same time. But like, yeah, so that the thing that's interesting about all that, they Killer Mike specifically had a really good song about what started like a lot of the cultural transitions here in terms of addiction. In his song Reagan, you know,
Hmm.
fucking all about how the state and media and corporations shove drugs and booze and like the extravagant party lifestyle and murder down your throat so that you get angry and addicted and violent toward each other, and the masses can't unite and fight back, and they're constantly put in prisons where they are forced to work, and it's primarily black people, which is, like, well, I mean, disproportionately, I shouldn't say primarily, uh, which like causes a huge amount of resentment in the community and perpetuates the divide. And like, it's because Reagan was so like good at acting that the real masters could fucking do what they wanted. They Oliver North, cocaine kind of like Iran Contra shit. Like, the whole deal there was that the US government created the problem and then stigmatized people who had the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's already, it's very obvious the war on drugs failed. So I don't know. I mean, even I'm I think that all drugs should be legal. And a lot of people are like, "You're crazy. Why would you say that? Like, why would you want people to just be able to buy crack or just be able to buy heroin?" Well, they're getting it anyways. And at least if, it was legal, um, they would be getting clean.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be laced with all the stuff that causes further problems. It wouldn't be based on other products like crushed up pills and shit.
Right. And not only that, but since, taxes are a thing, and, in, at least, because, like, drugs are legal, Amsterdam, they have the lowest addiction rates, and they use the tax revenue off of people buying legal drugs to be able to facilitate rehab facilities for people who are addicted. And so they have the lowest rate of addiction than any country in the world on everything,
Right.
because they take care of their citizens.
There's a great presentation by the, I think, Center for Sensible Drug Policy, if I remember the fucking long ass name correctly, but they did a presentation called "Did You Know War on Drugs Edition." It has Fat Boy Slims right here, right now, playing in the background, and it's really good stuff. And it goes over the fact that like the opposite happens when prohibit like the opposite to what the common person wants from prohibition happens when prohibition happens. And
Yeah.
generally speaking, it causes nothing more than, more addiction, because like addiction, disease, crime, they all drop when you start to decriminalize. I fucking wonder why. And the cartels they're empowered by prohibition. They get their entire like market base off of governments saying no and them saying, "Yeah, what you gonna do about it?" and then
Yeah.
coming in and fucking creating a criminal underbelly for all the other crimes. And hey, we can throw in some cocaine or smack too. Like, it's all connected.
I mean, if you want to see a prime example of what prohibition creates, like literally all anyone has to do is just watch Boardwalk Empire. Like,
Mm.
yeah, a lot of that show is fluff, and there's like romance in there that may or may not have happened, like whatever, who cares? But the overall message that I get from that show is this is what prohibition is. This is what prohibition creates. And that is on every level, not just with alcohol, not just with marijuana, with everything. You
Right.
cannot you cannot expect people to just not. I mean, because even dolphins get high.
Mm-hmm.
Like, like dolphins get high. They suck on pufferfish and get high. Dolphins have sex for pleasure. Like, even if one animal species is out here getting high and fucking for fun. Oh, sorry. I guess I can't say that on YouTube, can I?
And you can, yeah. Dude, this is my channel. Like, I'm gonna get banned someday, so I don't give a fuck.
Okay, okay. I was just making sure. Like, um, but yeah, like, if at least one animal species is out here getting high and fucking for fun, like, what? Like, and you expect us not to?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Well, especially given that the long history of humanity has been that, like, the opium trade literally helped build the like Far and Middle East.
yeah, no, it did. I mean, like, it, and the thing is like, it blows my mind because it's, it's so simple, and I get it. I get that these people that are in power, they like their money and all that kind of stuff. I get it. But it's just nothing's ever going to get better until everything falls apart. And I've been saying that for a long time. It's all going to have to fall apart before we can make it better. And and that's
Yeah.
just how it is.
Well, like, so the general thing is that the state creates and compounds problems, and then they profit and gain power off the alleged solutions. It's David Icke's problem reaction solution model. Um, and that's one of the reasons that I don't agree with everything he says, but what I will say is that, like, he's right about way too much for people to just dismiss him. Like David Icke, Alex Jones, all these, like, basically critical thinkers who are called conspiracy theorists as a derogatory term.
Yeah.
So, like, ultimately the evil associated with these people is that they create the evil and then claim to be the solution. Fucking I think it was Buckminster Fuller. I'm gonna look this up to make sure, but I think he said that the state. Okay, I'm just gonna make sure that I get this quote right, because I don't think I got it right just now. Uh, Actually, it was Harry Brown, I think, and hands crutch government quote. I think it was Harry Brown. I might have. Yeah, the government is good at one thing. It knows how to break your legs and then hand you a crutch and say, "See, if it wasn't for government, you wouldn't be able to walk." Like, that's perfectly it. Also,
Yeah.
yeah, Teddy, in chat, I've been sort of off on a weird hiatus for a bit, but I'm gonna be back now. So you can see me there. Also, you can find me on Twitter at JeremiahEXE, because I don't think you follow me anymore since my first bit of major censorship. 17.5 thousand followers gone. 12 years of work gone. Because Twitter decided that they didn't like what I was saying. So feel free to follow me there. But yeah, they create these problems. They created the bad conditions. They created the addiction, the desire for the addiction, and then they stigmatize the addiction to make it worse so that people would be more addicted. And then they put people in jail so that those people would be in worse psychological condition upon release, and those people became more addicted. Recidivism, profit, more prisons, more police, more control, more power. It's a vicious fucking cycle. And then on the vaping level specifically, the FDA and the pharmaceutical industry it's allegedly supposed to regulate are a fucking revolving door, and it's evil. And like that's the reason Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, all these vax companies got away with so much so recently, even though there's a lot that's been coming out, and it's the reason they'll still get away with it because they're shielded from liability. You can't sue for vax injuries. It's literally in the law. So
Yeah.
like the whole deal there, they want that control. They want to keep people away from good things, and they want them addicted so that they can keep getting more control. Period.
Yeah. No, I mean that's all it is. I mean that's what it's always been. I mean it's it's so it's so awful. I
Yeah.
mean, and it makes me so mad every day. Like sometimes I just have to shut everything off. Like I just have to shut everything off because if I see one more thing about them taking our rights away on some level, like it infuriates me.
Yeah.
And I you know, and I get that people have different opinions on abortion and stuff, and that's not what we're here to talk about. But and I get that some people think that them overturning Roe versus Wade was like a win for states' rights, but it is a violation of the 17th Amendment, like point blank period. It is, and and I don't want to get anybody upset. I don't want anybody like trying to you know burn my house down or anything. But I mean it's god awful because the thing is you know I have two children myself. Is that something that I would choose for myself in a regular normal situation? No. If I was in an abusive relationship and I knew that having a child with my abuser would tie me to them forever and there's no other way out than to terminate a pregnancy that I was probably, you know what I mean, that honestly was probably created in some form of rape anyways,
Yeah.
like yeah, I'm going to choose that, you know? And it's you know and the thing is there are so many reasons why women do what they do. I have never met a woman who was casual about having to have something like that done. Every woman I know that has ever had to make that choice agonizes over it all the time.
Yeah.
They, it is not an easy choice to make. Just like if you were going to give your child up for adoption, that is not an easy choice to make. And as we talked about earlier, the foster system is rife with
Sex trafficking.
sex trafficking, sexual abusers, just abusers in general, people who literally just use children as a paycheck and do not provide anything for them. Um, and if you are lucky enough to find a family to adopt a child for you or from you, um, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. I mean, a lot of these people who thought that they were giving their children to nice, sweet, happy families come to find out, like, because they paid, hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees to be able to adopt a child into like an adoption agency and all this other kind of stuff. Um, they think that that child owes them something. Like, not only did I pay all this money to get you here, but I also paid all this money all your life to raise you. So, the least you can do is make all A's. The least you can do is be a track star. That's
Yeah.
damaging as hell to a child, whether
Well,
you were wanted or not. To,
yeah, and of course, like
to value
the fact
is
that people don't respectfully parent is the root of that, because they don't see the kid as a full human being. They see the kid as like an object, part of their like collection. Like,
yeah,
you know, so my three comments on this, I made three tweets that I think sort of sum it up a bit. Um, I said, one of them, the Supreme Court decision doesn't matter. What matters is that your relationship with the state is cattle, not a free, independent human being. Your rights were never inalienable. That which they falsely called rights were simply privileges they can revoke. Smash the state. I also said it should be left up to the state. No, it shouldn't. The state should be abolished, not empowered. Here's the hilarious part. A bunch of spazoid right cucks are intentionally blind to the writing on the wall here. They just overturned more than one thing to jar Dems and embolden GOP. Then, in a matter of time, they will claim we have swung too far right, and we'll get more Biden. And I also said that they're talking about our pharma lies. They're starting to be anti-war, starting to realize that maybe the real enemy is us and not each other, and it's voting season. Quick, threaten abortion, make them hate the Bible, make Uncle Clarence trend. That's not racist, we're liberals. Uh, NATO funded a bunch of Nazis from 2014 to now. There's a genocide in Yemen. US constantly funds and lies about biolabs. Then, instead of getting rid of the state, they'll beg for a return to the previous status quo because at least they can get abortions. The problem is set points. There's a new baseline of control every moment, and sometimes they increase the level of control to intentionally insane levels, so people will cry out for the previous levels of control. The trick is to say no to all of their control and accept none.
Right. Well, I mean, but that's the thing. It's like, as a woman and as a mother of some like I have a daughter, um like I'm scared, to a degree, because like, I know I'm going to do my best to raise her, but the right way, and to make good decisions and stuff, but it's like, how far are they going to go? Because the thing is, you know um I believe that women are very powerful beings. I believe that we are more powerful than we have ever been led to believe that we are.
Yeah.
Um, because for centuries, we have been told that we are just supposed to have children. We are supposed to take care of our children. We are supposed to take care of a home. Um, we and that is due to like men wanting to control us, because if we had the power that we know that we have, that's within us, we would things would be really different, I believe. You would see more matriarchal um foundations in a lot of things. And you wouldn't have such, and I believe a lot of the control that happens within government, it's from the patriarchy. It is patriarchal. It's because old men are afraid of women, like point blank period. Because how many times have you went to go do something, and before you did it, you were like, oh, what would my mama think? How many times do you think, oh, what would my daddy think?
I mean, quite a bit from both. Like, ultimately, here's the thing with that. I don't support patriarchy as a theory. What I do accept is that a vast amount of historically, uh, like, the history is like vastly lined up in favor of male rulership. Like, I will acknowledge that, but like, I don't know if you've heard of Karen Strawn at all.
The
Um,
names.
well, she has a blog called Girl Writes What. She also does a bunch of MRA activism, and the reason she does this is because she saw for quite some time that there was some irrationality in the patriarchy theory, and a few times she came out against it by basically saying, like, yeah, the rulers were primarily men, but evolutionarily speaking, some of that makes sense, and then secondarily, like, men are also the primary ones hurt by the system itself, like overwhelmingly imprisoned, overwhelmingly injured by overwhelmingly dangerous jobs. They have their bodily autonomy violated at birth with circumcision. Like, there's a long series of things that directly negatively affect men, and it's less about patriarchy and more about like systemic, like, control will always trend itself toward the maximum. um
Well, I mean, I think it has more to do. I mean, I feel like it's rooted in religion. Um, is what a lot of it is, and we're supposed to have a separation of church and state, and we don't. Um, I really feel like we sometimes I really feel like we live in like a religious zealot hellscape. I know we really don't, but it feels that way a lot of times. Because it's like, oh, well, we're passing this law because Jesus doesn't like it. Like, I don't care. As like if you really get down to the base message of what Christianity is supposed to be, as long as you are trying to be the best person you can be, Jesus don't care. He don't care.
Well, so
I mean,
the thing is, they will fund both sides of things. So they, for instance, they funded um, the Ukrainian Nazis for a significant period of time. They did that in the 2014 Euromaidan coup, and they have been doing it ever since, like arming and training them and keeping them in power, despite what they've been doing in the Donbass. And they also basically installed Putin. And they kept him in power. They ignored all his human rights abuses. They helped him build what amounts to a fascist empire. So we've got fascists versus fascists. And
yeah.
the state funds those far right people to say, hey, any leftism is dangerous. And so any sort of like challenge to our state capitalist power will be crushed. This happened in Afghanistan with the Mujahideen, which were also theocratic, like far right people that they funded. This happened in Chile, where they installed Pinochet with the CIA and the help of the Chicago Boys and the Koch brothers. They will do it like in the Koch brothers, who are again affiliated with um, like big oil and big tobacco. They will support the big tobacco lobby in its efforts to do what they're doing now. So like the ultimate thing there is, it's less about patriarchy and more about, if we can embolden these certain groups, we can use them as puppets for our regime, you know, and we can keep in power because they will consider any threat to them a, uh, like they'll consider any threat to them a threat to the way of life that worked, to the established order, to the way things should be. And based on all of that, we can get these people's reaction to fuel military, cops, corporate pushes for more power, and essentially fuel what is a modern day fascism. Like, this is fascism. There's no way around it. The corporations, all the capitalists have to serve the state in some way, or they're bashed or banned. They all have to step in line. They all have to get on the program. Pretty soon, they're all going to have to start accepting a central bank digital currency controlled by the Fed. Like, this is the end times. This
Oh
is
yeah,
the
no.
mark of the beast being built here. It's fascist, it's terrible, and anybody worth their salt should oppose it. But they get people who were indoctrinated into this education system, which is, a Pavlovian matrix of control, and a Prussian school system that's like imported to designed to get people to follow the state's orders, even if it kills them. Like, the whole system is set up for their control, and they intentionally tell people when they're growing up that there's only two options, that those two options are red and blue. You're either team red or you're team blue, and they will pit those two teams against each other because it allows them to exploit the chaos. Like, they have a term for it in the 33rd degree Master Masons, Ordo ab Chao. And that's what we need to oppose. We need to oppose their particular order and their particular chaos.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree 100%. But I don't believe that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe if enough people would band together,
Yeah.
and because a lot of people vote out of fear. A lot of people should vote.
100%. Or just impulse vote because I gotta say something.
Yeah, it's like, oh, but where I live, they did something really messed up with the primaries. If you picked a nonpartisan ballot, you couldn't vote for governor.
Yeah.
You couldn't cast your vote for governor, and they didn't give you the option for any third parties. It
No
was
write
only
ins
the
and no ballot access.
mm-mm,
Yeah.
mm-mm. I didn't vote for anything.
Yeah.
I voted like yes or no on some of the issues, You know what I mean? Like some of the issues they were asking about. Like they were like, "What do you think about this? Is this important to you?" You know, I did yes or no on some of those. But other than that, I didn't vote for anybody.
Well, I don't vote at all. I withdraw participation. They they keep us. Imagine all the money for a moment, all the money in your county that goes to other people's political campaigns, going to an addiction treatment center or a
Right.
homeless shelter, or to paying down the school lunch debt that kids are building up, because kids are in debt to the school system even before they graduate high school because of the
Yeah.
lunch debt. Um,
Yeah. No, absolutely ridiculous.
you
I
know,
don't think that charge children for food, but my kids, my daughter, she's actually going to public school this year for the first time in a really long time. And they were, or my son is still in a charter school, um, which it's honestly not much better than what they get in public school. I mean, it's better in the sense of smaller classrooms and, um, you know, there's a little more autonomy with it,
yeah,
um, but I mean, they're still a Title One,
yeah,
you know, so they still receive, you know, big daddy government money and all that kind of good stuff by, you know, towing a certain line. So,
yeah.
um,
Well,
yeah, and
and that's the thing though. Like if all this money went to better schools, that wouldn't be a problem,
yeah,
right? So if people weren't donating to campaigns, but they were donating to get kids better educated, we would have a much better workforce.
yeah. No, I mean, I've said that forever. It's like why should I mean, and not only that, but they're so you know school taxes are taken out of property taxes. The reason why you pay property tax is so that way the schools that you are in district for receive that money.
Hmm.
That is why, that's why you see, lower income areas have worse schools and things of that nature because, and that's why they try to redistrict things the way that they do. So that way you can get, some more expensive houses in a poorer district to try and like give it a buffer and so they can say that they're not, Jim Crow and stuff up. Um, and it's but the thing is that's not it's I mean life isn't fair, but it's not fair like to some old spinster lady who never had kids and only has cats. Like why should she have to pay for your little crotch goblin school?
Well,
That's
and
not her, you know? But at the same time, it's like, oh, well, that child may end up being, her senator or her congressman or blah, 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 or he may end up being her doctor, one day. And it's like, so what? Like, if you're going to have children, you know, you need to buckle up to take care of them. It's not, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I had kids really young. I had my daughter when I was 19. I was not prepared to have children like I thought that I was because I was definitely one of those kids, teenagers that thought I knew everything and knew nothing, you know? Um, so I totally thought that like it was all good. But I was on government assistance for a good chunk of like my kids. They're 12 and 10 now. And I was on government assistance for a long time, especially when they were really little. Um, but I mean, so I think those programs are important, but I don't think that they should be provided by the government. I think that they should be provided by people. Like, like
mutual
it's
aid.
yeah, yeah, it should be one of those things where it's like, and I can't tell you how many times, like, because I did WIC, I would be like trying to separate my WIC stuff out, or like, and there would be people who would just pay for it anyways. They'd be like, save your stubs, use it for when you need it. Here, I'll go ahead and pay for it. It's like $20, you know, um, really sweet stuff like that. Or there would be times that I just didn't have enough money to get diapers, and I would be like, hold on, put it to the side. I'll come back and get it, and somebody behind me would pay for it. Like that type of stuff is what is going to make the difference, I think, in the world.
Yeah,
People like that.
people got to cooperate instead of compete. I mean,
Yeah,
competition can be good, but like ultimately, if we're not willing to be there for each other, the state ain't gonna fucking be there for us.
Huh. And I think that's where a lot of people are. A lot of people are like, oh, well, um, you know, I know a lot of people have that mentality of like, oh, it's okay if I have another kid. I'm already on food stamps. I'll just get more food stamps. Like, it's okay if I have another kid. Like, we're all on Medicaid. Like, this, it's free.
Yeah.
Like, and that's another thing that, like, I think that a lot of the conservatives don't realize with, with banning, with, with overturning Roe versus Wade and having a state where you're going to force birth, um, you're going to be responsible for that child. The state will be responsible for that child,
Yep.
whether it's through the foster system or through welfare. Because if they wanted to, if someone was having an abortion due to the fact that they can care for the child, they know that, like, I don't make enough money, I'm not in a situation, like, all of that does not equal having a good life for a child. Okay, well, you force somebody to have a child, well, now you're paying for a portion of their day. Now the state's paying for a portion of the daycare. Now the state's paying for, um, you know, the the insurance. Now the state's paying for, food stamps, WIC,
School.
whatever. Yeah, school on top of it. Yeah, that's just one more kid in the school system that you're having to pay for. And that's something else that I don't understand, especially with like libertarians, why they would want forced birth. Like, I mean, I get it from the stance of like, oh, well, killing, you don't want to, killing babies or whatever, but you're not killing a baby. You're killing a thing that does, like, literally, if you put a human fetus at like 6 weeks and a like chicken fetus at 6 weeks, you cannot tell the difference.
Well,
Like, they look the
so
same.
there's some arguments to be made in the other direction as well. Like there is the argument that like there are biological imperatives to birth, and that getting rid of it like causes severe psychological problems, which is why a lot of them treat it like a very grave situation. And then there's like the secondary thing of like we don't know when perception starts or when sentience begins. And so, like, my ultimate thing there is I don't necessarily shame it when it happens, but I do say try really hard not to. And try
Well,
really hard to get into the best relationships possible, not be in those. Learn to fight and learn to shoot. Get swole, get fit, get the ability to, like, destroy anybody who would force you into those circumstances to begin with. Like,
yeah,
become the enemy that they can't destroy. And then, you'll probably avoid it to begin with, and you'll have a much stronger relationship with the people around you, your significant other, your kids that you do eventually have if you choose to. There's my general vibe is I don't necessarily shame it when it happens. What I do say is try really hard not to, because the culture surrounding some of this, like some of the pro-abortion circles, is absolutely antithetical to freedom and a good society which like respects other people. It's oftentimes associated with very toxic people for a reason, and it's not all of them, and I wouldn't remotely say that, but like there are a significant enough amount of these people that support this, that support it for, let's just say, less than ethical or philosophically just reasons. And like they're seeing it like completely as a thing, like the whole time. you know it brings up the paradigm when states are willing to charge somebody with double homicide if they kill a pregnant woman,
right.
because they oft her offspring as well. And that to me makes sense, because especially since like I'm going to say most pregnant women see it as a baby growing in them.
Right. Well, because that's the difference between a wanted pregnancy and an unwanted pregnancy. And the
Right.
thing is that when you force women in a corner to be able, or when you force women to in a corner to give birth, whether they want to or not, you, I mean, there's a lot of stuff being robbed from them. And like, yeah, there are a lot of things that you can do to prevent pregnancy,
Hmm.
but nothing is 100% other than abstinence. And expecting people to not have sex is not realistic.
Right.
It's just because whether we want to or not, we are programmed to procreate, and that's what we want to do. And also, there are a lot of great benefits to having sex. Health benefits, like it reduces stress and all that other kind of stuff. And there's, other things that go into it. But the thing is that it is a natural urge for a reason, and expecting people to ignore it is not realistic. Um, and and if and the thing is like, this opens up a huge window to be able to allow states to force women to not have birth control. Or if they take birth control, they can be charged for murder.
Yeah.
Or if they have a miscarriage, okay, well, what's to say this miscarriage wasn't natural?
Right.
What did you do? And that's really shitty, because women already feel that way when they have a miscarriage.
Right.
Like, there's already of like a stigma around, like, what did I do? What could I have done different? When the reality of it is 90% of the time, nothing. It
Right.
just happened. Not all pregnancies are viable.
And so,
And
but like that's part of the thing there though, is that this is designed to increase that hostility, that tension, that feeling of less than. Because the whole
yeah,
point of it is to get people pitted against each other previous to an election season.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, no, this, I mean, 100%. I mean, and that's why they, and honestly, there are, I mean, and the way that they do, or the way that, a lot of the shootings happen. I'm not just going to say school shootings. I'm just going to say shootings in general, because there are lots of shootings that happen, not just at schools, but where there are active shooter situations. Um, you know, they, because there was a big speculation for a long time of whether or not Sandy Hook was planned. Like, because I think there were people there in the crowd who they had at other, like, they had entered, like, the news interviewed at other places, um, and they were actors. People did like research on them, come to find out they were like actors and all this other kind of stuff. And that was around around 2016, around the other election, and it's kind of,
Well, what I'll say about that is I don't know.
yeah,
Um,
I mean, big conspiracy theory. It really is. But the fact that the state doesn't have a problem killing us in other ways, why would they bat an eye at anything else?
well, right, but so the thing there is I don't know whether or not that's the case, but ultimately, like my preferred theory here instead of that is that the state and its big pharma alliance like have created an environment, and all these other big military industrial intelligence industrial, all of these things like coincide to create an environment where people are going to be pushed to do things like that. And then you create a cultural groupthink thing where like those sorts of people get to be bullied and ostracized and etc etc, and they will either be violent as kids or they will become violent adults, and you get a significant amount of these problems. It's the same thing with addiction, that if you improve the cage, the rats will stop getting addicted. If you improve the cage, like, people will stop being so violent. But the state doesn't want that because they're engineering this chaos in order to make sure that they continue to, even if they didn't directly plan something like that, it's part of their plan, and
Yeah,
they'll still get what they want out of it anyway.
yeah.
So, go. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just agreeing. That's all. I was just saying, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I mean, like that's the ultimate truth with all of this. We need to improve society from the ground up, because it's going to it's going to help from a parenting level, it's going to help from a schooling level, it's going to help from an addiction level, it's going to help from a violence level. And part of that is going to be realizing that prohibition doesn't work and it made society worse.
Yeah. No, it does. I mean, because okay, I know it's terrible to like romanticize, eras of the past, but every society has always had its issues. There's been no perfect utopia. Um, but the thing is that, you have to think about like way back, like like Greek and Roman, like obviously quality of life was not that great because, average lifespan was like 30 years old. um, because you were either dying in a war or you were dying of some disease that they didn't know how to cure.
Right.
Um,
And
but
that was part of the point of the expansionist empire, was to keep the supply of people working on the system higher artificially, because otherwise your society would dwindle to nothing eventually.
yeah, but the thing is that like, and there are restrictions and stuff with, in Greek and Roman society, but overall they were a more freer people, like they were, the Romans, they had wives and they had boyfriends, like, and nobody cared. It wasn't an uncommon thing. Um, and, you know, they were, you know, there was just, I guess, hang-ups, like societal hang-ups. Like, not everything was as taboo as it is in today's society, I guess, is what I'm really trying to get at. And like I said, they had their issues. I mean, they obviously they had slaves, and they would fight them for entertainment and stuff, and that's not cool. So I'm not at all romanticizing that aspect of Roman culture, but I am saying that, like, because they were freer people, you know, um, I think that overall they were probably happier, you know?
Well, maybe, the thing is, whether or not that be true, I believe firmly that until we get to an anarchist place in culture, there's going to be a gradual drawdown in happiness, a gradual uptick in control, and given the current sort of, control level and the mechanizations by which they maintain their control, I have this spiel I always say, that this is all going to end in a brutal apocalypse of rivers of blood and years of darkness, the likes of which will make Revelation look like a children's story.
Yeah,
Because there are too many hands on too many big red buttons. There are too many people funding too many biolabs. There are too many, people on too many drugs, too many gangs resulting of prohibition, too much collusion and corruption in office to do anything about it, if government was even for that to begin with, which it's not. Upheld by too many people who are too self-interested in the status quo. Like, it's all about that sort of thing. It's until we're willing to move to a more anarchistic modality, that's not going to change. Like, the founders really heavily loved Rome, to say the least. They covered everything in Roman symbology, including literal fascist symbology, which, it's always funny when they're talking about how fascism is so terrible in the Senate room, where they've got the fucking two faces on the other on either side of the speaker. If you ever want to see some funny business, just look at how they zoomed in gradually when they started to cover these people, because they didn't want the camera to capture the fascist symbology and make it too on the nose, but it's still there.
yeah,
So I mean, they loved Rome, and that's how we got here. The We need to, in my personal opinion, reject all previous societies and form all things based on voluntary relationships,
yeah,
which is likely to not happen. So we're likely all going to die as slaves.
yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, I mean, I get why they loved Roman society, or like they loved Rome, because I mean, up until that point, I mean, that was the greatest empire that had ever was.
Yeah, if you want an empire, sure.
Yeah. But I mean, but the thing is like even if you didn't want an empire, even if you just wanted to run like your own country, it's like why not? I mean, and I'm not saying I'm not at all like advocating it. I'm just I guess rationalizing it.
Hmm.
Um, but it's like why not model ourselves after the biggest best thing that there ever was? You know what I mean? It's like it's almost like when you're a little kid and you're watching like I don't know like a superhero thing and you're like oh man Superman's like the best ever and you want to be just like Superman or whoever you idolized as a kid um you know you see that and you're like oh man I think that's so great and then you just want to be that and I think that's where a lot of that type of stuff comes from and yeah, no, I mean I'm a big firm believer of those who don't study history are doomed to repeat it. But it seems like a lot of people even though they study history they're like oh maybe this will work even though it didn't
Right.
and they keep trying to force like a square peg in a round hole and it's like well maybe if I squeeze it it'll fit. Maybe if I turn it a different way, it'll fit. And it doesn't fit because it doesn't work and it's already proven to not work. You saw that.
Yeah, well, because the trend is, and I say this too, centralization is the enemy of freedom. And that's the reason, like, at the beginning of this conversation, when you talked about, like, these big box stores and mega corporations, centralization is what gave them their power, and it's what let them stay as powerful as they are. And, like, it's also what created, like, all the problems we went over, like the prison industrial complex, which, by the way, Earth Nerd Anarchist in chat says that if they made society better and stopped criminalizing drugs, lives wouldn't be ruined by the prison industrial complex and they wouldn't have to start over. They'd actually have something to come home to or potential to build a home instead of getting turned down for jobs. Um,
That's facts. That's
so,
fact.
like, all of that, and then also, like, she says, I'm of the belief that it will take people learning better, doing better, and teaching better. Having examples to look at goes a long way. Um, Medical Derg says public school food is worse than MREs. Um, Also, Earth Nerd says nicotine salt vapor here. LOL, mine's berry flavored. Um, so, like, let me see if I can go through some of these as well.
Or
Um,
China.
yeah, I like pineapple. Pipeline Punch is my favorite monster, and it has like heavy pineapple influence. Um,
Yeah. I'm
so
doing pineapple citrus.
interesting, yeah, yeah. It's been a long time since I've vaped, and I've been like clean and sober for 3 years.
That's
Kind of a proof for like the whole idea of improving the cage because I moved to Spokane, Washington from the rural California desert. So like I prefer it here to say the least. Um, so let me see. Troll the Purpose says 1,200 a month for a trailer, 1,700 a month for double wide in nowhere, Ohio. Go home, leftists. No masters, no kings, no managers. Go home, Karens. They're literally instruments of the state. I'm not exactly sure what he was saying there, but he said then LLCs were created to offer corporate lawlessness to well-off small businesses, sugar taxes, soda sizes, etc. Um, so yeah, I mean that's yeah. Let me see what else we got here. Genghis was bigger but not as lasting. He also said, now we have sudden adult death syndrome and it's linked to vaccine. Lowest. He also says lowest common denominator causes lowest common results. Most common is failure. He also says prison food in schools. Thanks, Obama. So yeah. So like the general vibe, I guess, because got to draw down relatively soon. Uh, I can see you're getting a little tired as well. Um,
yeah, I kind of have to use the bathroom.
yeah, yeah. Well, so the general vibe is resist their control because they're only doing it for themselves. They're not protecting jack shit.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and the vape shop that I was talking about that I first worked at, whenever I first started getting onto libertarianism and things of that nature. Um, They ended up closing last year because like he couldn't afford to pay the PMTA and he was going to get shut down anyways. So rather than have to go through that whole rigmarole, he just closed his doors.
Yeah.
And that's really sad. That's really sad because he had really great juice. I'd even made a juice there and it was like my favorite and I miss it. Um, and yeah, so I mean, there are so many places that have closed down because people who were who had a livelihood, you know, within the industry have had to, start over
Yeah.
because, you know, the crushing weight of the Fed.
Well, and like, it doesn't help. It doesn't help. It creates more addiction to the worst substances. It continues their ability to be stigmatized, which deepens the addiction. It puts them in hospitals where they're treated for like hundreds of different diseases. And the safe alternative is consistently outlawed by a company, and I'm going to call it that because that's what it is, that's masquerading as a regulatory board. We
Yeah.
will work with your companies. We will directly work with them in order to regulate them. And we will do this in an effort to keep our industry that we built along these lines the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and another thing, um, oh, shit, I forgot what I was gonna say. Never mind. It was there and then it left immediately.
I'm
So
ADHD and bipolar, so I'm fucked in that regard. Like, I don't know if you noticed, but sometimes I'll like get really far into a statement and then have to like come back to the beginning in order to like make it make sense all the shit that I just said. Yeah, it's a thing. Also, I refuse medication because I hate big pharma. So
yeah, I'm the same way as far as like I'm pretty sure I have like ADHD, but like I don't want to get put on medicine.
what? And it's a good thing you don't because the state just helped red flag legislation that says that they'll be able to peruse your psychological records for a background check now.
Is that in regarding like firearms or just like
Yeah.
in general? Oh, okay.
So if you want to defend yourself, if you want to go out and get a gun so that you're harder to rape, yeah, they're gonna scan your psychological history now. Fuck doctor patient confidentiality.
Yeah, no, I mean, which I mean, I've already been to therapy a ton and stuff for other issues that I have. But I mean, I do have a firearm. I actually got robbed a couple weeks ago at my store at
Not
gunpoint, and I didn't.
surprised.
Yeah, and I didn't even pull my gun, like because they like he had like my cousin was there and he had the gun on my cousin, and my immediate thought was if I pull my gun, he's gonna kill my cousin.
Right.
So I just kept my hands in the air, let him take the money and let him go. Because in my mind, I felt like that was gonna lead to the best outcome, and it did because
Yeah.
he got caught 18 minutes after I called 911.
18 minutes is a pretty good response time. Sometimes cops are like hours later.
Oh, well, I'm in city limits. I'm literally maybe 5 minutes down the road from the police station.
Right. Well, that helps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and dude wasn't from my town, so he didn't know any of that, and it was just one of those things where I think he just was riding through, saw vape shop, and was like, "Oh, I'm sure they have money."
Yeah, those people sell expensive shit to white people.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But I don't know, but obviously, I ended up okay, and my cousin ended up okay, and but you
Glad to hear
know,
that.
yeah, but having a gun isn't always an answer, because sometimes that can lead to more problems than
Well, having it
just
is the answer. Not using it when you don't have to
right,
is also
right.
like, I mean, because just to be clear, if the cops that caught him didn't have guns, he probably would have just kept running.
Right. Yeah, no, 100%. Um, but that's the thing, like, and also he had more firepower than I did as well. So
Yeah,
I was like,
that doesn't
I
help.
thought, yeah, I was like, yeah, probably not gonna end up. at
Well,
best.
okay, let me ask you, how much time have you spent at the range?
Oh, not enough.
Well, I think, and I'm not going to speak for future things, and this isn't a recommendation, but I think maybe once you spend more time at the range, I think that might change. I think you might get a lot more confident with it and your ability to quickly deploy and use it, especially if you go to TAC assault courses.
Yeah, I mean, part of the issue is that I don't carry it on me.
Right,
Um, so I didn't have it. I wasn't even near it to be able to pull it out
right.
anyways.
You'd have
Um,
been like, "Let me walk over here." What are you
yeah,
doing? Yeah.
yeah. So, that was part of it, too, is that, I don't have it on me. And part of the reason why I don't carry it on me is because I don't wear clothes that really work well, because I mostly wear, I'm a girl, I wear yoga pants and leggings and
Mm.
stuff like that. So I don't really wear a lot of stuff that is conducive to carrying a firearm. I know that they have stuff that works better with it and stuff like that. I
Well,
just
I
haven't
use
done enough.
denim jeans. Like even when I went for a 15-mile run the other day. I went for a 13 mile. I think I'm gonna try for a 20 this Monday.
Nice.
And I do that in jeans because it's like how I'm gonna be, so I might as well train like that.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, but that's the thing. Like, I just don't like, the only time I ever wear jeans is if, like, I'm going out and it's like colder, like
Yeah.
during the fall and winter and stuff. Like, I'll wear jeans, but 90%, but even then, like in the fall and winter, most of the time I'm wearing, like, I have like thick leggings, like that have like fleece underline. So that's what I'm wearing most of the time. I wear leggings, or I wear dresses.
Well,
Um,
something to maybe consider is like you could wear a flowy. Like, do you have a CCW,
a what?
a concealed carry permit?
Oh no, I don't have my permit yet.
If you
But I
get
just
that, you can wear a
Yeah.
flowy blouse, which will still look totally feminine, over a shoulder holster.
Yeah. Well, see, that's the thing. I'm trying to, that's the thing. I had, haven't really done enough research to figure out like what kind, um, because I've seen some really cool ones. I've seen some really cool stuff, but I really do want to get my concealed carry, because I do want to have it where, you know, um, no one can tell that I have it, because that's part of my reason of not wearing it on me right now, is that I don't have a concealed carry,
Yeah.
and I would have to, wear it where it's presented. And I actually have a friend of mine that just got shot in the head. Luckily, she survived, but she's going through a lot recovering from that. And she always carried where you could see it, and I believe that's probably why that ended up happening.
Yeah, you got to go for that target first. So that's why you would definitely get a CCW first.
Yeah,
Um
yeah,
so okay. I think we're relatively close to like closing out.
yeah.
Totally up to you because I know you can't sell ads. Do you want to plug your shop?
Yeah, sure. My shop is Hazy Vapor Lounge. You can literally follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Um, I don't do Twitter because I don't understand Twitter. I tried and I never got it. I never got the hang of it, so I just don't use it. Um, and yeah, so I have Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and it's all at Hazy Vapor Lounge. Um, that's it. It's I have a website, but I don't sell anything on my website, because the hoops that I would have to jump through in order to do online tobacco sales is not worth it.
Right. It's just for promotional purposes then.
Yeah, it's really just more for, like, if somebody wanted to, like, kind of get a blurb, or about me. I Regarding like different issues and stuff. Also am looking into starting a YouTube channel for the shop, where I would have kind of like tutorials on how to use certain things, and really just talk about like some of the legislation and stuff between vaping and marijuana.
Well, y'all can keep an eye out for that, and if you do make it, I'll make sure to link it in the YouTube description here.
Yeah, it'll be a while because I'm not anywhere close to being able to get that up
Yeah.
and running, but it's still in a conceptual phase.
Well, for now, you can send me any links to your socials that you want, and I'll throw them in the description. And is there anything you want to say before we hang up?
Just thanks for listening, everybody. I know that uh I get a little back and forth on things, but I mean, I'm kind of back and forth on things a lot, so
Oh,
it's just kind
that's the whole point of this channel. Like the point of this channel is that you know I don't have to agree with my guests, and when I do solo content, I don't have to like stick to a thing because it's all connected and I might be wrong. So the whole point of, like, I want to get a dialogue going. I don't like the
yeah,
whole I didn't write notes for this. I don't go into it with any specific like I sort of just fly off the cuff. I like the Joe Rogan model better, where it's more like a conversation. And like
yeah,
so I'll disagree with people occasionally, but like ultimately the purpose of it is to get their perspective so that people can know what it is. And then, if there's more to it, I can have other guests. If you want to come on the show and tell me something that was missed today, or if you have something else that you want to talk about, you can do that as well. Like, it's not a problem that you were, like, quote unquote, back and forth. That's fine.
yeah. Well, no, I mean, I just wanted to say that because I was just like, I tend to go back and forth in my mind. I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, maybe it should be like this," and I'm like, "No, maybe it shouldn't." And and I think that's also kind of part of the problem too, is that there's probably a lot of people who are like that, where they're like, "Yeah, I'm so firm on this right now," but then like something happens and it kind of changes the way they feel about it or the way they think about it. You know what I mean? And they're like, "Well, maybe it's not so this way," you know?
People want to be rigid. They don't want to consider the possibility that there are possibilities to consider.
Yeah. Well, and that's my problem, is that I consider all possibilities. So
Yeah.
it's so hard for me to just be one way. I mean, the only thing I know is that I want to be left the hell alone. I want to do what I want to do because I'm not hurting anybody, and you know what I mean? And like what I do on my property and with myself is my damn business,
Right.
and I just want to be left the hell alone. That's my stance.
Yeah,
And I think
totally reasonable.
and I think everyone has that right. I think everyone has the right to be left the hell alone. Um,
And me, I'm an extrovert. I don't want to be left alone, but at the same time, I don't want them fucking with my shit either. Because they fuck my shit up and make it harder to be an extrovert. They make it harder for everybody.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, because that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's like, oh, you can't be too out here. You know what I mean? Like that's too much. And then it's like, oh, you don't want to be involved. Well, you gotta get involved. Like,
Yeah.
or hey, you're minding your business over here. Like for example, I'm ratting us out, but in the county that we live in, we're not supposed to collect rainwater.
Oh, them bitch asses that don't want you to. They want you on their municipal shit full of fluoride.
I did it anyways. Well, we're not drinking it. We're not using it for drinking water. We're using it to, to supplement the garden, so that way our water bill isn't so high.
You could
But
though. Like so, okay. What you do?
yeah,
You build your own charcoal and sand filter. You can filter out most of it, and then you just heat the water, and it kills the rest of the stuff, and you've got pure drinking water that you didn't have to pay for.
yeah, I know, but it's just we're just well, this is our first stab at it for
Right.
one. So, we'll probably eventually get to that point, but it's not anything that we're doing right now because we're just in the very
Yeah.
beginnings of like learning how to be self-sufficient. And
Or
that's
you could
another
just
thing.
get a Berkey.
A what?
Berkey. It's considered the
Like
gold standard in it's really big life straw. It's
oh,
considered the gold standard in whole home and business filtration for water.
oh, okay, I
I
got
don't
you.
sell them. Alex Jones does. You can do with that information what you will, but basically, like it's for whole home. You know, fucking. I didn't
Yeah.
make any money making that statement. If they want to fucking sponsor my shit, I'll do it though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but that's the thing, like, so I mean, we did that. I mean, and because we live in city limits, we can't have chickens. Um, but I mean, we're gonna get rabbits first because obviously rabbits are considered pets.
Yeah,
But we're gonna get rabbits for meat. But that's another thing. I'm gonna start a personal YouTube channel where I'm gonna talk about like urban homesteading because there's
yeah.
so many regulations that I have to like skirt through. Um, and I just want to kind of give people who are in similar situations, like, hey, if you do it like this, you might be able to get away with it. If you know what I mean? Like, if you're cool with your neighbors and give them eggs, they might not report you for your chickens clucking,
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Um,
But
but
if you ended up doing that and the other one, because I think you would want to keep those separate. It's up to you,
yeah,
obviously. If you
I'll
do,
do that.
let's talk like a few months, maybe 5 or 6 months after you get started, and we'll see if
Yeah,
we can get you some traction.
yeah, no, that'd be great. I'd really appreciate that. I mean, really, the homesteading YouTube channel is really just for because we live on you know, we live on less than an acre. We're in city limits. We're very limited with what we can do and how we can do.
Right.
And I've scoured YouTube trying to find like urban homesteading stuff. And like there are some people who are doing it in small places and stuff like that, and that's cool, but like their cities aren't as restrictive.
Yeah.
Or they're not living in city limits, so they're
Right.
able to get away with more, and or they don't have an HOA. Which we don't have an HOA either. I would never move into a neighborhood that had an HOA. I couldn't do it.
Cops, but
Um,
not cops.
right, like yeah, I couldn't do it. I could never do it. But
Hmm.
yeah, so I want to be able. I just want to be able to give people information that I wasn't able to find. Um, at least not. I've literally had to watch other people and try and figure out how I can make that work for me. And I'd really like to just be able to give people the opportunity to see it in my setting, and
A
because I
personal
know.
journey of practical application.
Right. Well, and not just that, but it's like, people who are in situations where, they have restrictive city ordinances and things of that nature where they're not allowed to grow certain things or, have certain animals and stuff like that. And how can you still be self-sufficient
Right.
without all of those things? Without how can you still be self-sufficient and not have a 5 to 10 acre farm? You
Right, and
know?
and and that's part of the thing. Like I always say, you have to free yourself because you can't ask the warden for the keys to your cell.
Yeah, and so that's what we're starting to do. I actually just before I got started getting ready to talk to you and everything, ordered like 3 new books on Amazon about backyard foraging, how to make herbal medicine,
Yeah,
and stuff like that. Because I mean I firmly believe we're going to be in a situation to where we're going to have to be able to rely on ourselves, and if we can't, we're not going to survive.
yeah, 100%. All right, well, that was I think a pretty good talk. So if you want to be on the show, or if you want me or her on your show, network. Let's see if we can
Yeah.
set something up. Uh, but with all that being said, this was Jeremiah Talks for the first stream back in a while. Smash the state.
Yeah. I'm glad I was able to be a part of it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Thanks for coming on.
All right, bye.